you're going to get punched in the face. But if you're a respectable fan and you might cheer for your team, you might give it a clap, and you're not obnoxious, you're probably going to be okay.
Agreed.
The analogy I always use, Eagles fans are like bees. Bees go about their way, but if you swing at a nest, they're going to sting you.
I love that. That's a good one. Nice.
Chris Hansen here, and I'm going to need you all to take a seat right over there and check out Birds versus Boys.
I think you're completely right here, and I hate it.
Yep. Hey, idiots. Stop doing dumb things. I got 2 phones. Upset alert. Upset alert. I might go insane.
I think you're already there.
There's no hope. Hope is gone. If this was an AFC North podcast, we'd be done in 15 minutes.
Bob Hope.
I'm going to drink bleach. That is
the team you promised me you were going to be this year.
This is the Consciously Hopeful podcast.
I'll be watching.
Welcome to episode 53 of Birds vs. Boys. Ladies and gentlemen, we have so much happening in the NFL in terms of NFL free agency. The draft is coming close. I know Aidan is going to let you all know about the Branded Sports draft show that is coming, but lots of news with the Cowboys, lots of news with the Eagles, another big interview for us tonight. But before we get to all that, Aidan, how are you, my friend?
I'm great. I am physically in a better place than last week because I've recovered from my microchip vaccine. Mentally, I'm in a better place because I met Alshon Jeffrey yesterday. It has changed my life forever. I've taken a new mental approach. So I am fantastic going into the show tonight.
I love that. I love that. We are a week-to-week show, just like it is a week-to-week league.
That's you could look lethargic one week and then come out and be hyper-focused the next. Not to say that we were lethargic last week. I think mentally we were locked in for 2 people who were on their deathbed. But yeah, you were right. Just like the NFL, podcasting can go the same way, just less a helmet.
It can. And especially tonight because we have producer Vince back, was not with us last week, but he is in form. So he will be joining the show later for the second edition of Vince's Nuggets. I can't imagine where that's going to go. But Aidan, before we start, let's get these technical notes popping.
All right, big laundry list of technical notes tonight. Where we should start with technical notes tonight, the guest for our interview is Chase Sr. He is with Chat Sports, and if you haven't checked them out, I watched their YouTube show, and it was fantastic. It's a live show, lots of comments, a lot of engagement. This concept was fantastic. So if you haven't checked that out, check out Chat Sports on YouTube. He's a host for them. Now, he is from Pennsylvania, Philly fan, Eagles fan, everything like me, except he lives in Dallas. So he's doing the opposite of Kevin. So I thought he may be a fantastic guest because you guys are doing like a Freaky Friday thing here.
I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, you guys can kind of compare notes as to how it goes living in enemy territory. But one of the other big things we want to talk about, so we have discussed the draft ad nauseum on the show. We will be live for the draft, similar to our March Madness concept, live stream of the draft, the Branded Sports Drought Show, sponsored by Kenwood Beer. So here's the concept. We're going to be live during the draft. We're going to do our own mock draft, make every pick. If you get the pick correct, you get a point. Person with the most points get this little prize pack from Kenwood Beer, Philly's finest. If you haven't checked it out, it's fantastic. So we've got the draft drought show going on, and that will be night 1 of the draft later here in April. And then last note, as always, please subscribe to the show. I haven't been saying that a lot. So not only follow, but also subscribe.
Yes. TikTok, everywhere podcasts are. Subscribe, rate, listen, watch. I mean, we put a lot into this show. Producer Vince does an amazing job cutting us up, making us sound good, making us look good, and putting on fire clips for YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. So Pornhub as well. You know, we may be on there. You never know. But it's no cursing, no porn, no nothing. We are a family show, just like the NFL is a family product.
Although if Deshaun Watson could ever figure out that you could just watch sex on the internet, he might be like way better off. Like he might be like
for
still
free.
able to play in the NFL. Yeah.
For free. Or just, make a phone call to the thousands of women that would want to have sex with you.
Yeah.
for free.
I don't think we can go down that road.
No, we went down that last week. But let's get in. Let's start with the Cowboys tonight, because I think there's more news surrounding the Dallas Cowboys right now than Philadelphia. So first, on Wednesday, Cowboys signed a massive new free agent, one of the best names in the NFL. If we're doing power rankings of names, he's definitely on Vince's power ranking. Do we know who this is?
Jot that down. Power ranking names. Keep that in the back of our brains for later this offseason.
Do you know who I'm talking about, Aidan?
I actually don't. I haven't seen.
The Cowboys have signed veteran tight end Jeremy Sprinkle to the roster. So former Washington football team player. So he will join Dalton Schultz and Blake Jarwin. I think this is more or less filling the shoes of Blake Bell, who signed the 1-year deal last year and left and is now back in Kansas City. I don't know much about him. I think he's tormented the Cowboys, because I have remembered throwing things at my TV and like, how are you letting a dude named Sprinkle beat you? I remember that multiple times against the Cowboys. So excited to see what he brings to the table. Not jumping out of my shoes. Excited about this because, they already have 2 tight ends ahead of him on the depth chart that, did a good job 2 years ago in Jarwin and did a very good job this last year in Schultz. But I also don't know if this stops them from coming up and trying to draft another tight end to this team.
That was the joke I was going to make.
It's come out that from Chris Mortensen, the Mort Report, and I always believe what Chris Mortensen says, one of the smartest guys when it comes to the NFL, always informed. Jerry Jones is infatuated. Jerry Jones is in love. Jerry Jones is obsessed with Mr. Pitts.
Listen, if we revise this Mad Libs, you could just throw my name in there. Infatuated, in love with, all of that with Kyle Pitts. I think you'd have to be a moron not to be infatuated with this kid. I guess, I don't know if statistically is the right word, but checks out in terms of physical attributes. The closest we've seen the freaking Calvin Johnson Megatron. I think you'd have to be insane not to be infatuated with this kid. I totally get Jerry Jones' infatuation. And many people will say, just like last year, there are bigger holes than receiver. And they took CeeDee Lamb. There are bigger holes than tight end. But if he's there, the Cowboys have to take him.
And like we talked about last week, if he's there at 10, which I do not think he will be, I'll discuss an option for them. But if he is there, you take him, one, because he's the best player available. There's not, if he's there at 10, nobody else on the board will be graded higher than him. Just not possible. I was listening to G-Bag Nation yesterday on 105.3 The Fan, and they had former GM on, and he said if Pitts and Surtain are there, he's taking Surtain for the Cowboys just because. And it was just, you take best player available at that point. You have to.
Absolutely.
You have to.
And that's no knock on Surtain. It's just how good Pitts is. And Surtain is probably going to be CB1 off the board. He's that good. And I was listening to a podcast where Greg Cosell, who's very good with scout tape, was breaking down Surtain and said he's going to be the most NFL ready because Alabama just presses and plays man all the time. So he'll be ready to go. And even so, Pitts is still going to be the more talented prospect. Like, you're having a legitimate, bona fide CB1 who has played man for 3 years and done it well at Alabama. And Kyle Pitts is still far and away the best option.
Yes. And it also helps you in cap hell, because we discussed this last week. If they take Kyle Pitts, they can get out of the Amari Cooper deal after next year, and they're not paying him $1 bazillion million a year. It gets them out of the $20 million a year that they have to pay him. And then they can figure out if they want to pay Gallup. And they're again, bang, immediately much younger. They can get out of the Zeke deal after next year, and they can run with Pollard. And they have freaks all around Dak Prescott. You just gave Dak Prescott a lot of money. You just gave him the keys to the kingdom. Surround him by everything possible to make him look good and make him succeed. And adding Kyle Pitts to that weaponry. I mean, look what Kansas City does. They just keep adding and adding and adding weapons. It's what good teams do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big thing with resetting the cap, like you said, okay, so they move on and move off the books these deals like Amari Cooper, Zeke Elliott. Well, you take that money and then you invest it in your offensive line. And then all of a sudden, who cares who's behind Dak Prescott handing the ball off to him? Because the holes are going to be so huge, it really doesn't freaking matter. And you spend the money, you've already invested draft capital into Pitts and CeeDee Lamb. And if they're good, who cares? Who cares? You don't have to spend the money. Invest it in the offensive line.
Mm-hmm. But like we said, I don't see him being there at 10 for the Dallas Cowboys. I think if they want him and Jerry is so infatuated and in love with him and wants to do anything he can to go get him, he's got to move up. And he's got to move up to 4.
I was thinking that too, is just looking at the teams on the list. If he falls to 9, the Eagles have to know what's going to happen at 10. Like, you can't be naive. You know the Cowboys are going to take him at 10 if he's there. And sitting here at 9, so is the Denver Broncos. And Noah Fant is really good.
He is.
So I don't know if they pull the trigger on Pitts. They might still, even with Fant on the team, being only in his 3rd year. And I'm pretty sure he was a first-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so I don't know if they do 2 tight ends in the first round. The Eagles would have to move up to 9, but I'm with you. I don't think he'll even make it to 9. If he does, trade up. But if I don't see him making it past 8 with Carolina. I have the draft order pulled up right now for you.
Yeah, I think Dallas would have to move up to 4. And the reports are that 2 teams that are looking to move up right now are the Dallas Cowboys and the New England Patriots. Both want to move up. And the Falcons are a team that are currently listening. So that's the number 4 spot. Who else would move up to the 4 spot to get a quarterback if it's not the Cowboys moving up for Pitts?
So I was about to say, I feel like the Patriots moving up to 4 would be for a quarterback with Atlanta. So that would actually benefit you because that's another person who's taking a quarterback. And then all of a sudden it's 4 for 4 on quarterbacks in the beginning, and it's less people who need a quarterback. Who else would move up?
I mean, this is our first show, obviously, since our guy Colin Thompson has a new quarterback down in Carolina. They traded for Sam Darnold. Sounds like they're going to pick up his 5th-year option. Would they be willing to move up to 4 or even try and get a quarterback at 8? I think they may be out of that competition now.
I really think that they are. So looking at the draft order, I think we could really see 4 straight quarterbacks to go, but then the next teams 5, 6, 7, 8 are all teams that need skill position players. And that's where it gets murky. We're in no man's land where it could be 4 or 5 quarterbacks, but it also could be 4 players off the board here. So,
the Bengals at 5, it could be Chase, it could be Pitts, it could be Slater, it could be Sewell.
How funny was the meme going around? So Cincinnati's in like a civil war where Joey B, the Lord and Savior, tore his ACL year 1 because the offensive line was as bad as advertised. It was Philly's bullpen bad. We're talking historically bad. So you have to protect him. Also, Jamar Chase might be a Hall of Famer. So that meme where it's like anybody catching the ball from Joe Burrow if Sewell is blocking. And then it's like Jamar Chase, the ball bouncing in front of him because no one's blocking.
No one's blocking. And Joe
anybody blocking for Joey B, and he ends up with another torn ACL. So they are an interesting one to watch because it is malpractice if they don't go Sewell.
I agree. I feel like at that point, you have to protect your investment and your franchise, which is Joey B.
I told you last week, it's one of the rare times where best player available doesn't apply.
Yes.
Best player available is the best player available ... to make sure Joe Burrow survives, to me. Like that's how I feel. So yeah, I could see a situation where it then becomes an arms race because if 5 teams don't draft a skill position player, and then you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, who are pretty steadfast in who the quarterbacks could be. Shaky with 7 and 8 with the Lions and the Panthers because they have 2 guys who are young, but we're unsure of, and Goff and Darnold. But that's where it gets murky, and that's where you make that move if the guys are sitting there on the board once you get to 6.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Jerry does. Does he try and make a move prior to the draft and just go up to 4 and solidify himself, basically knowing if he wants Pitts, he's going to take him? Because the Jags are taking Lawrence at 1. They're not moving. The Jets are taking Wilson at 2. They're not moving. San Francisco moved up to 3. They're not moving. So if the Cowboys and they're taking a quarterback. So if the Cowboys did move to 4 with Atlanta, they can have Pitts. Congratulations. If you want them that bad. But what do you have to give to get there?
I think see that's the problem to me is some team's going to go all in to go up and get a quarterback, and it's going to get in the way of you guys getting Pitts.
I agree.
Because going up to draft a quarterback, if the quarterback works out, who cares if you give up another first-round pick in the process? So if somebody's going to get to 4 with Atlanta, but it's because they want Justin Fields and somebody was dumb enough to think he had character concerns or something like that and draft Mac Jones over Justin Fields. I cannot believe that we're at this point. We don't have to go down that road. We'll talk about it in our interview, but I can't believe we're at that point. So I think the quarterback arms race is going to be in the way for a Cowboys move up.
I agree, because I don't think the Cowboys are going to be willing to give up what a team is going to be willing to give up to get a quarterback.
Absolutely. Because it's worth it for a quarterback. Is it worth it for a tight end? I don't know.
No.
Even as a generational talent like this. So we'll see on that. But like I said, if he falls to 9, you little person, I'm trying to be on my best behavior. You better move up to 9 from 12 and get this kid.
Well, let's say Sewell goes 5. So 4 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. Sewell goes 5. So 6 is Miami. They could take Pitts. Let's say they take Chase. Okay.
Let's say that. Let's say the team at 6 takes Jamar Chase. Let's say that. Let's say that smart thing occurs. Let's say that team who is drafting 6 takes a generational wide receiver talent who's been told by every scout alive that he is the best wide receiver prospect for years. Let's say that team at 6 does that. Vince has my tweet pulled up here. If the first 4 teams go with QB, it would be a gold mine for the team who picks 6. They basically have their choice of Chase, Pitts, or Sewell based on whoever is left after the Bengals selection. Again, this is just for the team who has the 6th pick in the draft. Good for that team.
So then the Lions are on the clock at 7. And Pitts is still sitting there. Could Dallas jump up from 10 to 7?
Would the Lions let you? Or would they just take Pitts? So here's my line.
Or do they want the 5th quarterback?
Ooh. Oh, I love this. I love this scenario stuff. I wish I was in a war room. I wish I could just hear the chatter of NFL GMs and what is going through the mind of the new regime in Detroit right now. What does a new regime always do? Make a splash.
Mm-hmm. And
I don't know if Jared Goff is really a splash. It was just making salary cap space match.
You can't tell me they are all gung-ho over Jared Goff. And let's just say, I could see them falling in love with Trey Lance. He just looks like a Detroit Lion.
I agree. What is it about him? That
I don't know.
Maybe it's because North Dakota plays indoors. The Lions play indoors.
So let's say 7. Trey Lance is sitting there. Detroit's like, yep. Bang. So they take Trey Lance. So that's 5 quarterbacks now in the top 7. So we're in Carolina territory now. They have their quarterback, and there's 5 already gone. How do they pass on Pitts?
They don't.
They can't, right?
They don't. They don't. And see, so that's the dilemma for the Cowboys is they have to make it the 4 to surpass all these teams because 7 or 8 or whoever isn't going to want to trade with you. They're just going to take them themselves. So despite the fact that it would be good value to take them at 7 or 8 and trade up to 7 or 8, you're going to have to leap all the way to 4 to get them. And at that point, that's the only way. And the price is going to be so high because the Falcons are going to say, okay, you'll give me 1 first-round pick. But the so-and-so, let's say the Patriots who just spent all this money, they want Justin Fields. They'll give us multiple picks because all they're missing at this point is a quarterback for the long term.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to want next year's first, this year's second, and something else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you're going to be giving 10, 44, a first next year.
Yeah. I don't know if they can pull that off. There are too many holes on defense, and I'm a big believer if you love a guy, go get him, but that's a lot of draft capital.
So, all right, let's say Pitts goes 8 then. So we're on to the Denver Broncos at 9. They take Surtain.
Oh, that'd be annoying.
So Dallas has Slater on the board and J.C. Horn on the board. What would you go?
I'd go Slater, but I'd also like to add, this is very random, but I think that Patrick Surtain, the Broncos always to me are like a cornerback factory.
Mm-hmm.
We're the quarterback factory. They're the cornerback factory, except it actually works out. I could see Surtain. You know how they have those orange uniforms? I can see his last name in Denver Broncos orange. I can just see it. I'm very confident
100%.
in that. And
if there's
he'd
not
also
a
be great on the Eagles, so I can see him going through picks ahead.
If there's not a quarterback there at 9, or they don't move up for a quarterback, I honestly think they're taking Surtain in front of Dallas.
I do too. I really do.
And I think they know Dallas is keen in on Surtain, and they're just going to fuck them.
Well, I was about to say, which again makes the Cowboys have to force their hand. It's almost like they're forced to trade up. If they want any of these guys, 10 isn't going to get it done. And every team's going to know that. So every team's going to try the same thing.
But for me, if Slater's still sitting there and that's doomsday scenario, I'm fine with doomsday scenario if that means we get Slater. Because we've talked to Kyle Yeomans. Like, he moves in and starts day 1 for the Dallas Cowboys at guard. And he's your long-term answer when he kicks out to tackle.
I think he'd be a fantastic get at 10. I don't know if it's a doomsday. I just think it's like a low ceiling pick. Mm-hmm. There's low risk to it.
And there are corners in this draft, kid from Northwestern, like that you can get at 44 in the second round.
The UCF
that are going to be able to help.
Animals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And who knows? That Caleb Farley may drop to the second round because of the injury history.
Listen, I'll tell you what, drafting an injury-riddled cornerback in the second round, nothing goes wrong. Not a single thing.
So, all right, let's say Slater then. We did not have this plan, ladies and gentlemen, that we were going to walk through the first round of the draft, but this is what happens in draft season.
If only there was a live stream you could watch on draft night to react to everything that goes live and hear predictions live. Oh, wait, there is.
Bang. All right, so let's say Slater then goes 10. So then the New York Giants are there at 11. You have J.C. Horn on the board. Devontae Smith's on the board. Waddle's on the board.
Devontae Smith. It's over.
They take Smith?
Yep.
All right, bang. They take Smith. Eagles on the clock. 12th pick. Waddle's there. Horn's there. Or who else?
Michael Parsons. Micah Parsons.
Hashtag Team Micah.
Hashtag Team Micah. Look, he's going to be the most talented player there. I don't know if they'll take him. They would definitely take Jalen Waddle. I'm sure Vince would absolutely be ecstatic to have another Jalen on the team. But I feel like they're in a position where they're almost forced to take receiver because of how bad the receivers have been, just like last year. So I guess they go Waddle.
That's kind of like the Cowboys being forced to maybe take a cornerback because they've been so bad at corner.
They've been so bad. The pressure's on. The pressure is on.
It's just, I feel like this entire draft process, it's been Dallas is taking a corner, Eagles are taking a wide receiver. And it would just be so funny if both teams took, like Dallas takes an offensive lineman and the Eagles took a linebacker.
Well, that's what's so funny is that, like, yeah, those things would be great in an ideal world, but when you're drafting 10 and 12 and 9 teams or 11 teams choose ahead of you, that's not the ideal world. You don't get your pick of the litter. You did when you were at 6. Again,
imagine if you were at 6.
Imagine if you're at 6. That number is pretty high, and you could pretty much have whoever you want. But
especially
it can play
with
out
4 quarterbacks going. 1, 2,
and
3,
4
4
quarterbacks ahead of you. Like, imagine that. Possibly 5 investors. Possibly you. Oh my God, I can't believe it. But yeah, so I think it's just how the board plays out in front of them, and we'll see. I can't wait to I love talking about this. I love doing this every week. Well, I'm sure we'll do it. I think one of the plans we have, just to tell the people, probably should have put this in technical notes. We're gonna do just a podcast of player breakdowns, how we feel about those players, specific details, going player by player. Not everybody, but just some buzzwords that our teams are keying in on.
I love that. I can't wait for that. This is, this is what we live for, is draft season until the season starts. And then we live for that until the playoffs. And then we live for that. It's just anything that's happening right now with football, we live for.
Well, when you're bad, it's more fun. Because you're not really competing for a Super Bowl. So you're like, all right, who's going to get me to the point that I can get to the Super Bowl? And
now when the Cowboys were drafting 24th or 25th and they take Taco Charlton, that was fun.
That waiting forever to see your team pick, and then they either trade out or pick somebody, and you're like, wait, why? Why'd we do that? It's the worst feeling in the world. When you know
a grown man name a taco?
Named after Taco. Named after one of the funniest characters in the league. Great show.
And TJ Watt was sitting there?
And TJ Watt was there. Great player. I was almost defensive player of the year this year.
Weird.
We got Derek Barnett this year. He's the only person left on the team from the 2017 draft.
That's wild. That was the Sidney Jones draft, correct?
It was. It's cornerback in the second with an injury. So Caleb Farley, love you, but off the board. But since I met Alshon, now I was trying to turn a new leaf and be positive, because as soon as I saw him, I was like, all right, I forgive you for dropping that ball in New Orleans. Like, we are now friends. We don't have to worry. I forgive you. And I was like, I gotta be in a better mental headspace. And people ask me, so like, you're gonna forgive Howie then? And I'm like, well, I'm not going that far. I was like, no, I can't do that. I'm gonna be more positive, but not with him.
Only so positive when it comes to that.
I can only be so positive.
I am positively excited for this interview. Do we want to get into Chase now?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Chase Sr., former resident of Pennsylvania, now behind enemy lines for us in Dallas, boots on the ground in Cowboys territory. Again, host for Chat Sports, YouTube live stream, fantastic show, a lot of engagement, thousands of followers. When I was watching, there were 10,000, 11,000 people in the room watching together. Fantastic. And he is a friend of Branded Sports as well, engages with us quite a bit, and big in Philly media despite his move. So without further ado, our interview with Chase Sr., presented by Stateside Vodka.
All right, Aidan, another amazing guest that we have here on Birds vs. Boys. So we are now joined by Chase Sr. from Chat Sports. He is the Freaky Friday version of me, an Eagles guy living in Dallas, as I am the Dallas guy living in Philly. And he is a must follow on Twitter at Chase_Sr. So Chase, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm surprised you didn't hit me with is Chase Sr. your real name? Because I get that all the time. And the question that people ask me the most is your real name Chase Sr.? And then the second one is, are you going to name your kid Chase so that he's Chase Sr. Jr. and you're Chase Sr. Sr.? And I always tell him, like, why would I do that to my kid? Because he would be tortured his entire life. So appreciate you guys having me on. I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing, and I'm pumped.
We were joking actually before the show that I was just going to, through the interview, just call you like Chase Sophomore and then Chase Redshirt, Chase Junior as we go, instead of just Chase Senior the whole time.
Yeah. Anytime we had a substitute teacher in high school, It's all that they would say. Like, oh, Chase Sr., you a senior yet? I'm like, nope, sophomore so far, but I'm getting there. And the funniest thing is like, they act like they're the first person to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
So they get so excited about it. And I'm like, I've heard this many times before. So
I got that too. My last name's Power, so every sub and every new person be like, "Oh, are you related to Austin Powers?" I'm like, "Oh, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one for 20 years."
You got me.
It's good though. All right, so we were talking beforehand. I love you're repping the crew right now with Chat Sports. I reached out to you just because I was like, this show is fantastic. So I've promoted already in the first segment about the concept of Chat Sports. So my first question for you, Chat Sports is really to live in the moment, engage in the moment, and react live to what's going on.
Yeah.
So say you're on air live as a host when the Eagles trade back from 6 to 12. What is your reaction?
So we went live right after they traded back.
Oh, wow.
And in the moment, right away, I said, I don't like this. So I understand the thought process of Howie Roseman always trying to be the smartest guy in the room. And he trades back from 6 to 12 to get another asset. He thinks along the lines of Sam Hinkie, draft assets, draft capital. And I understand that because the Eagles right now are bereft of dynamic players and they need to rebuild. There's no doubt about it. You saw the product on the field last year. They are slow, they're old, and they're expensive, and they need young, cheap guys who have the potential to be really good. But I think what moving back from 6 to 12 does for the Eagles is for a guy who hasn't drafted well in years past in Howie Roseman, he now runs the risk of missing at 12, whereas if he would have stayed at 6, I think you're getting a sure thing, no doubt. If you stay at 6, you do the smart thing and you draft Jamar Chase, you draft Kyle Pitts, maybe you take Devontae Smith. And there is no way, I see no reality in which Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts bust. Now from going to 6 to 12, you're taking a chance on a guy. And this is a pick that you cannot miss on. So yeah, you can talk about an extra first-round pick next year, and you can talk about having potentially 3 if Wentz plays 75% of the snaps. But what the Eagles need is premier players. And how do you get premier players? You get sure things at the top of the first round. And by going from 6 to 12, I think they've opened themselves up for failure, which is something that they can't afford to do.
I think that was the perfect answer. And if you've ever listened to the show before, that is like what I've been preaching since the trade went down.
Yeah.
It's almost ironic, just like how aligned and parallel our answers were. People are going to think I paid you to say that.
You didn't hit me with the Venmo, but I honestly think like that's the reality of the situation, because now like at 12, say they go after JC Horn, right? Could be a great cornerback prospect. But as soon as a cornerback gets roasted in Philly and he loses his confidence, there's a realistic possibility that cornerback is just toast because he's playing in the pressure cooker of Philly. Like you get a dog like Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts, there's no way that they're going to bust. They're, in my opinion, going to be sure things, and they're going to be productive players and elite players for the next 10 years.
That was my line of thinking too, is just pick just eliminate risk.
Yes.
Mitigate the risk.
Exactly right.
So you're down in Dallas, and it came out from Chris Mortensen. We talked about this in the first segment earlier, that Jerry Jones is in love and enamored and obsessed now with Kyle Pitts. And Aidan always says, yeah, you can put anyone's name in there. Everyone's obsessed and elated with Kyle Pitts. Do you think there's any chance, is there any buzz down in Dallas that Jerry's going to try and move up to get Pitts? Because we believe that's the only possible way Dallas comes away with Pitts is if they move up to 4 to Atlanta's spot, because he's not falling to 10. He's not getting past any of those teams dropping to 10. So if Jerry wants him that bad, what are the realistic expectations of him moving up to 4?
Yeah, so there's serious buzz down here, and we know that Jerry Jones loves himself some splash players. Kyle Pitts is exactly that. And I think the Falcons being open to trading for opens up an avenue where the Cowboys could trade up. And you know that Jerry Jones is going to do whatever he has to do to improve the team. He'll take chances, he'll take risks because he's aggressive. And I actually really respect him in that regard. Now, he's missed a lot and he's made a lot of bad business decisions because he thinks that way. But I do give him props for being an aggressive owner, because there are a lot of guys out there who just don't really care. And they'll be like, you know what? I'm making millions, I'm making billions, I'm straight. But Jerry Jones is always going to try to, one, improve his football team, go after a championship, two, but also he just can't help himself when he sees a guy like Kyle Pitts. He's like, yep. Oh my gosh, this guy, he's such a sexy prospect. I need to go get him. Now, the Cowboys need a lot of defensive help. Like, you can talk about their offense all you want. Before Dak got hurt last year, they were putting up 30, 40 points per game. They weren't winning games because that defense was absolutely atrocious. But I will say this. I think if the Cowboys trade up for Pitts, it's a great move. Like, I don't see any defense stopping that offense. They will be loaded next year and for many years to come. And boomers will say, Kyle Pitts is a tight end. You don't need a tight end. This dude can play anywhere on the field. Like, he might be listed as a tight end. He can play wide receiver. He can play in the slot. You can get him the ball really quick on some bubble screens and let him do his work. He is not a tight end. He is a weapon. And as an Eagles fan, if we have to go up against Kyle Pitts for the next decade, I'll shit my pants every Sunday. Because I think the guy is an animal.
I know, especially being at 6 and be like, all right, we have a chance to watch this guy and root for this guy for the next 10 years. And going that to drastically then being like, all right, we have to root against this guy for 10 years. It's just a feeling of despair if that happens.
Yeah, because now it's like, okay, Cowboys got CeeDee Lamb in front of us last year. And Jalen Reagor, I think he's a good number 2. He was such a reach in the first round last year. So now you're looking at back-to-back years where by moving back this year, last year not moving up to take CeeDee, the Cowboys take CeeDee and Kyle Pitts, and we have to stare down those guys for the next 8 to 10 years with Darius Slay, who's like not that good.
31.
So, yeah. Big play Slay didn't make any big plays last year. He had one pick and he got torched in coverage. So,
and I've been saying to Aidan as well, if they did make that move and get Pitts, it can help them get out of the cap hell that is the Amari Cooper deal as well after next year, because they can move on from him easily, move on from Zeke Elliott, and they still have plenty of weapons around Dak without those two.
It's actually a really good point. Like, you're going to have to pay Dak a lot. I know his salary cap hit this year is going to be somewhat reasonable, and you can make the argument that as the cap goes up in future years because of this new TV deal, if Dak continues to produce like he's produced in years past, then that deal won't be as fat as it looks right now. But yeah, is Amari Cooper a $100 million wide receiver? I'd probably say no. So if you want to move on from him, and I don't think there's really any like guarantees or any
after
like dead cap hits, right? So you move on from him, and now you got CeeDee, Kyle Pitts, and Michael Gallup. If you decide to move forward with him, that's a really legit offense. I think what hinders the Cowboys is Zeke. I would never pay a running back more than $13 million a year. I thought that's a perfect scenario where Jerry just couldn't help himself, right?
Yep.
He gets so enamored with Zeke that first year or two, and he's like, oh, this guy's amazing. I got to give him the bag. And you see what's happened. He's just not the same player. But if they can get out of some of those contracts, and all you really need is like a nice little 1-2-3 punch with Kyle Pitts, CeeDee, and then you put another like Gallup in there. It's pretty solid. That's a pretty solid offense. And I actually really like Pollard. I thought he was better than Zeke last year.
We said it all season long on this show.
Yeah.
Every time he stepped on the field, you saw the difference. It was
just more
unbelievable.
burst. That's what he had. That's what he brought to the table.
All right, shifting away from Cowboys Eagles here, but staying with the draft. There's been some pretty eye-opening comments about Justin Fields and his character lately. So do you believe that where there's smoke, there's fire? Or do you think if you're one of those top teams, you would still take a flyer and pick Fields?
Yeah, so I had to go live right after Orlovsky said that on the Pat McAfee show, and I wish I would have had time to dissect what exactly he said in the context that he said it. I'm not buying it. I think a bunch of this stuff is thrown out around draft time to really control leverage or to bump down a guy's draft stock in order for another player's draft stock to increase and rise so that he can go up the board. A lot of this stuff is just like all agent driven bullshit to me. So I don't buy this about Justin Fields, because when I watched him in the college football playoff semifinal, the dude took a crack to the ribs that would put any of us in the hospital and we wouldn't be moving for weeks. Yet he's able to absorb that hit, get back up, stay in the game, and then he's just dropping dimes for the rest of the game. So if we want to talk about character and we want to talk about toughness, I'm looking at a guy who looked like he could have gotten murdered if he was a regular person, taking that shot to the ribs from that big ass linebacker. And then late in the game, he's displaying all this deep ball accuracy and he's quick, showing off precision with his throws and his reads. I thought that performance was like miraculous and incredible. So that's what I'm looking at with Justin Fields. I'm not worried about these anonymous reports and sources saying, oh, last guy in, first guy out. To me, that was Dwayne Haskins. And that stuff was real, as we've seen how his tenure ended with the Washington football team. For me, that's not real. And there's no like real substance to that with Justin Fields, in my opinion.
Do you think I might go this, you saying the Dwayne Haskins thing, and I felt like I could see it even when he was at Ohio State. Do you think the reputation for Ohio State quarterbacks who haven't really panned out in the NFL, do you think the traits from those guys like Haskins are carrying over to Fields just because of reputation of Ohio State quarterbacks in the past?
So I work with a guy, Tom Downey, who's one of the best draft experts out there. His mocks just kill it on YouTube, and he spends hours and hours looking over tape for some of these prospects. He made a good point the other week. Before Patrick Mahomes became Patrick Mahomes, couldn't we make the same argument that at Texas Tech, they never produced a good quarterback?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from. You can look at all the Ohio State quarterbacks and say none of them worked in the pros. And that's true because they literally haven't had a superstar quarterback come out of that program. But that's like saying, the Sixers draft somebody during the process era and we say, oh, he's going to be a bust because he comes into a situation that is dysfunctional. It's like one guy can change the course of a franchise, and it's a totally different player who has nothing to do with the situation or the quarterbacks in previous years. Also, it's like Ryan Day is somewhat of a new head coach, right? So Ryan Day hasn't been able to really produce an NFL talent. And I think this is his first guy with Fields. And also coming out of high school, he's the number 2 high school recruit behind who? Trevor Lawrence. So this guy's been highly coveted for a long time. So I know people like to point to that. I think that's almost lazy though. Just saying, well, every quarterback from Ohio State is bust, so Justin Fields is going to bust too. You just have to evaluate the player. And I think that Fields has the potential to be a superstar. I think what to focus on here is this. It's all about where a quarterback goes. If Sam Darnold would have gotten drafted by the San Francisco 49ers or the Carolina Panthers with the current regime that they have right now with Matt Rule and Joe Brady, we're looking at a totally different quarterback. But what happened? He went to an incompetent head coach in Adam Gase, who's a joke, who when Ryan Tannehill left him became a top 10 quarterback. He went to a franchise that has been in utter dysfunction for decades. And you're a product of your environment if you're a quarterback, right? So I like to make that argument. If you took a child, right? And I like to say this, if you took a child and he had no parental supervision, he had no parental guidance, there were no rules at home, he was never held accountable for anything that he did, and he had awful, awful parents, chances are he's not going to be a successful human being down the road, right? But if you took a different kid who grew up in an incredible household with awesome supportive parents, and he had responsibilities, they held him accountable and they kept him in line while being supportive of him emotionally in life and professionally, that kid's probably going to be good, right? You take a quarterback like David Carr back in the day, he goes to a franchise in Houston that was like a new franchise, right? So like he failed and he was destined to fail. We see this with quarterbacks all the time and we think, oh, they just can't play. It's really about the environment.
I could
I
not
couldn't
agree more.
Yeah.
I was about to say the same thing. I could not agree more with that entire thing. That's the perfect analogy for it. And same thing, 49ers sitting there at 3. I'm with you. If I'm there, Justin Fields is the guy. I cannot believe all the smoke that's around Mac Jones' name and everything like that. It's been incredible.
It's baffling to me because I take stock in it. Because Adam Schefter, Mac Jones to the 49ers. If it doesn't happen, I'd be shocked. Daniel Jeremiah, Chris Sims, Dan Orlovsky, Mike Lombardi, all saying that with what Kyle Shanahan looks for in a quarterback, Mac Jones is the perfect guy. Kyle Shanahan wants a system quarterback like a Matt Ryan, who he was the offensive coordinator for back in 2016 when Matt Ryan won the MVP, and his numbers that year were ridiculous. So I think what it's come down to is like maybe John Lynch wants the prospect with upside, and that's Justin Fields. Whereas Kyle Shanahan wants the system fit, and that's Mac Jones. And he sees what Mac Jones did last year, and he says, look, I think we have an opportunity to win right now. Mac Jones gives us the opportunity best to win right now. So that's the guy I want. But when you trade up to number 3, like you open yourself up for a lot of failure. Like their jobs are on the line, and they will lose their jobs if they miss on this pick. So I would go with the upside play. I'd keep Jimmy G for a year. He's like 22-8 as a starter. And yeah, he's gotten hurt a lot, but say he gets hurt, then you slide in Justin Fields. If not, you give him a year to develop. And I think if you give a guy like Fields a year to develop and work on some of the processing stuff, which some of the scouts point to as being something that he has to work on, like I think Justin Fields in that system would be unbelievable. And also like Kyle Shanahan has never really had a mobile quarterback. Imagine what that element would add to his offense. So the Mac Jones stuff for me is crazy. Everybody is saying Mac Jones, Mac Jones, Mac Jones. There's something in me that says it can't be Mac Jones. Like it just can't. It makes no sense. So I'm going to hold out hope that it's Justin Fields. But who the hell knows what happens on draft night?
I'm right there with you. It's such a huge leap to 3 for Mac Jones. But to piggyback off that, so to kind of bring it back to our teams, 5 quarterbacks in the top 10 would obviously probably benefit the Cowboys and the Eagles. Do you foresee that happening? All 5 guys. So we got Lawrence, we got Wilson, we've got Fields, we've got Mac Jones, and then Trey Lance. Do you think all 5 guys go in the top 10?
I do. I do. Yeah. I mean, right off the bat, you're going to have 3. Maybe a desperate team moves up to 4 and trades with the Falcons. That's a 4th quarterback right there. If not, like since he's picking 5, they're probably going to go offensive line or reunite Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase. And then you've got 5 other picks after that. Like I think some desperate quarterback needy team that wants the hot ticket prospect is going to move up. So I actually do think that it's going to be, 5 guys in the top 10. I think that's the reality that we're looking at. Yeah.
We even said we could see Trey Lance going 7 to Detroit. He just looks like a lion. Don't know why.
Yeah.
We don't trust Jared Goff. Or somebody moves up to that
Jared
spot.
Goff. Yeah, like that really wouldn't surprise me at all. Now I would say, the trade for Jared Goff now doesn't make a lot of sense. But is Jared Goff the holdover for a guy like Trey Lance? And could he be a guy who grooms a quarterback who scouts say needs a year or 2 to develop? Possibly, but I think we're seeing 5 quarterbacks in the top 10. I do, which is like good news and bad news for the Eagles. Like going back to that original point. The other thing with going back from 6 to 12, it's like, we'll pick whoever falls to us now. And I just don't like that line of thinking. Like take the sure thing.
That's what I've been screaming from the mountaintops these past few weeks. I could not believe that trade went down.
I'm with you.
I loved every second of it.
I'm sure you did. And now, again, just like last year, 2 picks ahead, and we're at the mercy of what the Cowboys do. So that's kind of the basis of the show, is us going back and forth with each other. So one more question before we get you out of here. We'll let you guys compare stories. Like we said, you were in the opposite situation of Kevin, who is a Cowboys fan living in Philly. You are an Eagles fan living now in Dallas. Behind enemy lines, what has it been like?
So I moved here in late February, and like I haven't been able to experience football season, so I'm not really sure yet. Also, Dallas, especially where I'm at, which I was saying before we started this, it's kind of like the equivalent of Rittenhouse for those living in the Philly area. So it's like an upscale neighborhood. So there are a lot of transplants here. So I haven't really been able to kind of experience the Philly Dallas disdain. But I will say, like, I've gone on a couple of runs. I've worn an Eagles shirt. I've repped the Flyers and I've repped the Phillies. And I've definitely gotten some looks like, for real, man. And hey, I wear it loud and proud. I'm going to rep my squads. Like, I grew up right outside of Philly in Westchester, and till the day I die, I'll probably be, buried in an Eagles jersey. So I'm going to rep the squads. But when football season comes around, I think that's the barometer as to like what that hatred is really like. I always try to make the argument though that like Philly fans aren't as bad as what people make us out to be. For instance, me and my buddies were in Nashville for the NFL draft a couple of years ago, and we would tell people that we're from Philly and we were rocking Eagles shirts, and people would be like, "Oh my gosh, are you guys all assholes?" And I'm like, look, we're not all assholes. Like, I'd say 5 or 10% makes the 90% of us look like dickheads, but we're not all like that. So I actually look forward to like proving to people that Philadelphians, we're not all throwing snowballs at Santa Claus, which happened decades ago. We're not all throwing batteries at JD Drew. We're not fighting each other in the stands. Like, we can be decent people. So I look forward to like proving that to people.
Fantastic.
And I would agree with that because, one, I'm married to an Eagles fan. That's why I have both banners behind me that people ask every single week on this show, on our TikTok or our YouTube. Why do you have both banners? You can't do that. So I'm married to an Eagles fan. So at least one of them I don't want to kill. And I have been to the link probably, I've been to 7 Cowboys-Eagles games.
Okay.
7-0 for Dallas, no big deal. But every game that I've gone wearing a Cowboys jersey, I haven't gotten shit because it's the way you act is how the Eagles fans at the stadium are going to act. When they start coming at me, making fun of me, I said, I know. Everybody has their flaws. This is just mine. Then we have a laugh. They call me an asshole and I go on my way. It's the people that go into the link thinking like, no, I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm going to wear. That's when you're going to have a problem. You have to realize you're going into their home. Respect it.
Yes. And Philadelphians treat the Eagles like they are family. They're not their football team. And the link is their house. So you're right. If you walk into the
Take
link.
your shoes off.
Yeah, and Dak throws a touchdown to Amari Cooper, and you stand up and you throw up the double birds, and you're like, yeah, fuck the Eagles. Like, people, you're going to get punched in the face. But if you're a respectable fan and you might cheer for your team, you might give it a clap, and you're not obnoxious, you're probably going to be okay.
Agreed.
The analogy I always use, Eagles fans are like bees. Bees go about their way, but if you swing at a nest, they're going to sting you.
I love that. That's a good one. Nice. I'm gonna use that.
I'm gonna use the one about the kids. Like, if you put them in a bad environment and their parents don't pay attention to them, they're probably not gonna be good in school.
Be a bad quarterback.
Have you had experiences though when you've been around Philly, like rocking Cowboys gear, where you do get shit for it?
Not really. More from like my wife's family before they knew who I was. Like, I remember there was like we went to a escape room, and there was like, a boyfriend of like a cousin who I didn't know, and he just found out I was a Cowboys fan. We're in the middle of the escape room. He's like, "What the fuck's your problem, bro?" And I'm like, trying to figure out how to get out of the room. I don't know. He's like, "You're a fucking Cowboys fan?" I was like, you know where like the hidden Y is? Like, just like that's like the worst experience I've had.
Yeah. Well, for some families, it's a deal breaker. For you, it turned out all right.
And the funny story too, just before we get you out of here. So I met Emmitt Smith with my wife the March before the Eagles won the Super Bowl. So I had my Emmitt Smith Gators jersey on. We're talking. I told her she's an Eagles fan. He's like, "Oh, that's a beautiful ring you have on, sweetheart. You better enjoy it because it's the only ring you're ever going to get being an Eagles fan." Boom. And then a couple months later, bang.
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
Funny how it works out.
Yep.
It is. All right, Chase, let everybody know about Chat Sports, where they can watch you, where they can listen to you, how they can follow you on Twitter before we get you out of here.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter and IG at Chase_senior. Anytime anybody hits me up with like a sports related question, I love hot takes too. If you want to criticize me and give me shit, that's fine. Hit me up on those social platforms. As for Chat Sports, we have around 240,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we're continuing to grow. And that's not including like all of the team specific channels that we have as well. So go to YouTube, subscribe to what we're doing. I guess the best way to put it, it's an interactive YouTube channel that is growing really quickly. Our popularity is kind of soaring, and we like to have a lot of fun while hitting you with the hard-hitting analysis too. And as people cut the cord, make your way over to Chat Sports because we're getting it done on YouTube. So there you go.
Love
Fantastic.
it. Thank you. That was a pleasure, man. We're going to have you on after the draft too and
Oh.
cut up some analysis.
Always. Actually, I look forward to a lot of the branded tweets that I see on my feed because they always crack me up, and I really actually do like the content that you guys are pushing out there. So keep it up.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Chase.
Yep. See ya.
Another big thank you to Chase Senior from Chat Sports for being with us. Aidan and I both think that was one of our best interviews. He's a lot of fun. Make sure you check out everything they're doing. They are the future, but they're doing it right now. We're definitely going to have him back on the show, Aidan.
Your fantastic analysis. Two things. One, they're the future right now. And two, I think he was a great guest. Very similar to us, just young guys who will shotgun a beer with you, but then also break down prospect tape for quarterbacks in the draft. And I think that's exactly what we've been building with this podcast, and he's doing it with another company. And it was just a perfect mesh tonight, and fantastic interview. A+.
Mm-hmm. It was. All right. I think it's time to wrap this show up. But how
we have a great TikTok segment here tonight. There's the return of Vince's Nuggets. The TikTok is geared towards Vince's Nuggets. Vince, come on in, my friend. It is your time to shine.
Good to be back.
There he is. All right, so we are going to do our TikTok.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. She was just sitting quietly all night. The second I come on, she's fucking. Are you kidding me?
Don't worry. You should see Eddie's cat when we do the NBA podcast. He literally has to throw the thing. Sorry to PETA. He doesn't throw it hard. He throws it onto the bed. It lands. Mm-hmm. Cats always land on their feet. Anyway, so here's the plan. We're going to do our TikTok. I'll introduce the topic here in a second because you're going to love it. But first, Vince, would you like to do the pilot episode of Vince's Nuggets right here and now?
I'm super excited. I've been waiting all week.
Fantastic. The floor is yours, my friend.
Great. So, the number 3 ranked kicker in this year's draft is Riley Patterson out of Memphis. So he's 6 foot 190. His projected 40 time just has a little dot there. I guess they don't have one. Projected to go in the
kickers
6th round.
Don't run.
You don't know how fast your kicker is?
Nope.
He's projected to go 6- free agency. So he hit 70% of his field goals in 2020. He made a long of 56 yards. But what we're looking at is his junior year here. So just junior year, when he had a superb season in which he connected from 23 of 25 attempts with a long of 52 yards. He was a perfect 6 for 6 from 40 and 5 of 6 for over 50. That's actually kind of impressive. And he was invited to the Senior Bowl. Shout out Riley Patterson.
That's
my nugget of the week.
You know what's
Vince's
crazy?
Nugget.
So for Vince's Nuggets, he shouted out Riley Patterson from Memphis and the kicker from Florida. And I've known both of these kickers. I think I need to get a life because I've known both of the kickers that you've shouted out so far. Speaking of kickers,
I'm picking the best kickers here.
You are. I cannot disagree with that. You're doing a deep dive. I don't think anyone else is doing hard-hitting draft analysis on kickers that may or may not get drafted in this year's draft.
I can tell you walterfootball.com, and shout out to those guys because that's where I've been getting all this stuff from.
What a niche. That is a niche of a niche. Mm-hmm. That is remarkable. All right. Speaking of kickers, our TikTok segment tonight is top 5 kickers in the NFL. So
this is going to go off.
I can't wait till people don't get the joke and just are having a full-fledged argument about like our kicker choices for 5.
What joke?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, our very serious conversation we're about to have about kickers in the NFL.
Can we just take this seriously, guys? Come on.
Very serious.
Yeah. Let's take it serious here for a second. All right, normal triangle. I'll go first. We'll go around from me to Kevin to Vince.
5 down to 1.
5 down to 1. 1 being the most impressive kicker in the league. All right. So at 5, I have Mason Crosby of the Green Bay Packers. I particularly like him because he usually drains 60-yard field goals against the Cowboys and ruins their life. So he's always had a special place in my heart.
5 for me, Will Lutz down in New Orleans. Fantastic name.
Number 5 for me is whoever kicks for the Jets, because that team is the butt of every single joke, but you never hear anyone rip their kicking. So it's their kicker every year is the Howie Roseman of that team. King of self-preservation.
Vince, they don't rip the kicker because the kicker doesn't have a chance to go out and kick field goals or extra points because they're so bad.
Well, then good for that guy. He's the Blue Mountain State backup quarterback thing. He never has to do anything.
Easy money, baby, like Alex Moran. All right, at 4, I have Brandon McManus, Denver Broncos. Shout out to my Temple guy. He's also pretty good in the league, but I'm always going to give a shout out to my Temple people. Chase also went to Temple. I should have mentioned that. Sorry.
Number 4 for me, from Buffalo, Tyler Bass, another phenomenal name.
Number 4 for me, I have someone who does not look like their name, Rodrigo Blankenship, the king of the rec specs, the sports goggles, the goat down, the goat to replace the goat. That's how he had giant shoes to fill. Like if you think about that, he's replacing Adam Vinatieri, and he was like, I think he was one of the best kickers in football last year, which was why he's on my list.
There you go. Yeah,
I mostly have him because we're rec specs brothers. I was the rec specs kid when I was like 10. Moving on.
3, I was just say at 3, I have Harrison Butker from the Chiefs. Pretty much the opposite of the Jets. Instead of getting no opportunities, he gets every opportunity possible. So at 3, I have Harrison Butker, butt kicker.
At 3 for me as well, Harrison Butt Kicker, the butt
Look
kicker.
At that.
How good are we? Great name.
At 3 for me, I have someone who's already been mentioned, Mason Crosby, for 2016 and 2016 alone. I bought his jersey immediately after he hit it the second time.
At 2, I have Justin Tucker. He's literally the most accurate kicker of all time in the NFL, which makes it really funny that he's at 2 instead of 1 in our kicker power rankings. But oh well, he's 2 for me.
The number 2 kicker for me, Ryan Suck Up.
You're just picking great name kickers. Yeah.
You've gone on to what I'm doing.
Number 2 for me, I also have Justin Tucker, the opera singer. Remember that kick in All-Star Week? What do they call it? Pro Bowl weekend, where he hit like an 80-yard field goal. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
He's going to go down as the greatest kicker of all time, Justin Tucker.
Greatest kicker of all time, not even number 1 on anybody's list here. And at number 1, I have Younghoe Koo. You can tell this guy is important and special because he was a Falcon who actually made it on my fantasy team this year. I would put up with him, and he plays for the Atlanta Falcons. That's how special this guy is as a kicker.
Hell has frozen over. Number 1 for me, Rodrigo Blankenship.
Nice.
No analysis, just cool name.
Nope. Yep.
Cool.
Rodrigo Blankenship.
I've loved that dude since Georgia. Number 1 for me, I think that's going to be kind of a shock, but Aidan said most impressive kicker, and most impressive to me is Cody Parkey. A field goal post is about this wide, right? Does this seem accurate?
Yeah, given the scale.
He hits him every time. I don't know how he does it. It's so much smaller than the area where you're supposed to kick the ball, and he hits the tiny little post every single time. Most impressive kicker I've ever seen.
Thank you, Cody, for one of the greatest moments of my life. You well-deserved number 1.
And those are our top kicker TikToks.
Thanks for everybody who stuck around for that portion. Who waited an hour to hear that one.
Absolutely. All right, let's get these people out of here. They've been listening or watching long enough. You guys got anything else?
Nope. Thank you to Chase for coming on. Again, we have the Draft Drought mock draft show for Branded Sports coming up, round 1 of the draft, sponsored by Kenwood Beer. So we'll have that. And again, please subscribe to the show. But thank you to everybody who listened and tuned in.
Thank you to Chase. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, everywhere podcasts are available, TikTok, and go buy a shirt. And get ready for the draft show because it's going to be a blast, brought to you by Kenwood Beer. And this episode of Birds vs. Boys has been powered by Branded Sports and brought to you by Stateside Vodka.
Can you give us one long Rodrigo to sign us out?
Rodrigo Blankenship.
Chris Hansen here, and I'm gonna need you all to take a seat right over there and check out Birds vs. Boys.
I think you're completely right here, and I hate it.
Hey, idiots. Stop doing dumb things.
I got 2 phones.
Upside alert. Upside alert. I might go insane.
I think you're already there. There's no hope. Hope is
Dude,
gone.
If this was an AFC North podcast, we'd be done in 15 minutes.
Bob Hope.
I'm going to drink bleach. That
Be
it?
the team you promised me you were gonna be this year.
This is the Consciously Hopeful podcast.
I'll be watching.